Now we're going to, second to last, Matthew's already on. He's transforming in the automotive industry. I've asked Eddie. Someone find Eddie. Carl. So industrial tech, energy tech. Eddie, you ready? Always. I love that. We're going to play ping pong. We're going to put on a demo right now. Eddie was amazing. And I have to like say, we've yet to lose a match. And last night was just...
Don't say that. You're without...
Drug test.
drug test.
I like to make the drug test.
But like in life, the most important thing you can do is choose your partner. And I got Eddie. So why don't, since you're on Zoom, Matthew, tell us how technology is transforming the automotive industry, if you could, and then we'll go on to the others.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a living, breathing example. With the workforce becoming increasingly transient, and particularly in manufacturing jobs, it's becoming very difficult to offer a very reasonable hourly wage and good benefits to get people that come in and want to establish a career in manufacturing. So automation is becoming all that much more important, not just from the, operational side, but from a quality and inspection side of things. So the visual inspection component is critical. We are being not just asked, but effectively mandated to invest more and more in capital so that there's as little human interaction with our process as possible, because as much individual human interaction as there is, that still leaves whatever minuscule percent of human error in place. And if all you're doing is putting in 100%, 200%, 300% inspection to assure that bad parts are not getting out, it really doesn't make a difference, because especially with the important and safety critical parts that we're manufacturing, if there's one part that gets out, even if it's one part in a million, it creates a heck of a stir. So what I would say technology for us is finding a way to not just better design and engineer parts up front, but it's more derived at the processes themselves. How can we eliminate as much of the human element out of the process as possible?
So that begs lots of questions, but one of which, what about your competitors? What are you seeing on the competitive landscape in technology?
So it's pretty much all the same. I mean, every time we go to a company to help provide us with a potential automation solution, we find out that our competitors on the same programs have already contacted them. So it's all the same. I mean, the other thing that bears mentioning is that with what's going on kind of within the North American trade supply chain is that, other companies had gone down to Mexico to try and rely a little bit more upon the labor side of things, both from a pricing and, your standard hourly worker in Mexico tended to have a much better work ethic, tended to care a lot more about their job and take pride in their job and be more careful. But with the, the actions that are being contemplated by the current administration, that's bringing a big pressure, and a lot of those companies that have moved down to Mexico are now looking to reshore back to the U.S.
So who's providing the technology for you that you're talking about?
Oh, we've got probably, 10 to 15 different vendors in the Midwest. We're based here in Cleveland, Ohio. There's a number of companies here in Ohio that are doing that. We have a number of companies in Michigan that are critical for that. The big impact on us, we deal in very sophisticated, heavy gauge, very highly engineered products. When you see in a Super Bowl commercial GM pickup that's pulling a space shuttle up a rocky cliff, those are our parts that are very carefully designed to do that. But really right now, the only company that's capable of doing that is a Canadian tube mill. And as a result of the contemplated tariffs that are going on right now, we're looking for alternative sources in the U.S. To be able to provide that capability. We've yet to find it. Even, by the way, for this company's U.S.-based and Ohio-based operations, just that are not equipped to do the same level of processing.
Gotcha. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Eddie. Let's bigger picture, because you've been looking at this whole landscape.
So, yeah. Does this work? Yeah, maybe the on button. first of all, congratulations to Matt. So just full circle, we visited his plant, I think 4 years ago, and at the time he was half the size and double the trouble. So you've come a long way, my friend. I wish you all the best. It's really interesting to see the company at the time, and it's really amazing to see how you've grown, how you've managed to escape all the problems and come out much better and agile, and now on the way to become a massive success. So
But unlike you, Eddie, he was my partner in pickleball, and we couldn't beat Barbara. Right? She's our champion over there, pickleball.
the silent killer.
Barbara
She-
cheated.
She did not cheat. She picked a better partner, apparently.
Better athlete.
I think she's a lifelong athlete, and we just pretend to be one. That's the difference.
All right, yeah, over to you, Eddie.
What do you want me to talk about, Mark?
This is energy and industrial tech. This
No, I
is
get
what you live for.
Yeah, so
I
no,
want
anything.
an insight, or what scares and excites you, or both.
Yeah, see, here, there's a couple. What scares me in terms of and let me first do a 2-second background thing. So I'm I wear two hats. I'm with one hat I'm investing across the value chain, across the asset classes for a family office, and we're sort of agnostic. The other hat, which is a more relevant hat, is the hat where we invest in essentially clean tech, agri-tech, and energy transition. And so in that space, we invest typically in early stage breakthrough technologies that could meaningfully contribute to the decarbonization of the world. And that's a super exciting arena for a number of reasons. One, this is not a one and done problem. This unfortunately will, for the next several decades at a minimum, before the so-called AI solves all our problems, we will have to sort of cope with the consequences of climate change, whether we believe it or not, and have to mitigate and adapt. And in terms of energy, we have to create significantly more energy rather than less, because the way we set up our world increasingly demands more energy. And that more energy hopefully can be drawn from mostly renewable resources. We've come a long way, and that's the part where stuff excites me. There's a very significant percentage of that energy already in wind and solar, who are now mature, respected, sort of EBITDA positive technologies. But as a venture investor, I'm not investing in these because they deliver sort of mid-low digit returns. That's not very interesting to me. So we are particularly interested in investing in sort of low carbon alternatives for technologies that are up and coming. So, for example, low carbon gasoline. We know EVs are eventually, hopefully, what saves our transport needs. But only 3% of the world is EV, and over the next 25 years, that's a massive curve to climb, and therefore there will always be need for internal combustible engine cars. Luckily, otherwise Matt would be out of the business. Partly.
He can build for.
No, I know that, but like
How's your low carb fuel company going?
Yeah, so with 361, or as a result of an introduction from 361, we invested in a company called Nacero, which had two massive pivots, one from low carbon gasoline to SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, and then from SAF to methanol. Methanol is going to be preferred fuel for shipping going forward. There's massive amounts of CO2 emissions by shippers, and they need, particularly driven by European regulations, look for new alternatives that are lower emissions, and those are either LNG or methanol. Methanol is a very big up and coming fuel, transport fuel, and they're going to be the first large 1.9 M ton methanol plant in the States that delivers sort of the CI score that you want.
When does it come online?
so what I'm excited about is investing in those technologies. And the interesting thing in that space is that there's very few sort of, let's say, Silicon Valley type venture firms investing in this, because it's all real assets, capex intensive stuff, and a lot of venture investors shy away from that.
Well, that's a segue to Carl. And I know you've also looked at pyrolysis.
And we have an investment in a pyrolysis company as well. Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah, I'm probably the only non-financial person around here. I'm a nuclear engineer, so I'm familiar with everything from nuke plants from the Navy side, the small, what I call the Corvette plants, to the big 1,200 megawatt plants that we built. Also did combustion turbines, windmills, solar panels, and did a little stint as a power broker, bought and sold electricity in California. And what scares me is the fact that everybody looks at power generation. And if you're looking at data centers, they're looking for a place to find some power. And now you're seeing they're starting up 3 Mile Island, they're starting up another nuclear plant that was in Michigan that was closed down. And those are 600 megawatt plants. I mean, you're pulling a lot of power. And they're locating them there because they can't move it. When I was in California, I couldn't move power from the north of California to the south of California. Because when you look at those transmission lines, you got to go through switch yards. And you got to buy space in that switch yard, and there is no space. So California can't move power from up north where it's real cheap down south where it's real expensive. So that's the other thing is, and then solar and wind. I didn't buy any solar and wind power because the risk mitigation of that is you have to back that up. If you have a sunny day and it's real hot and your windmill doesn't turn, and you're supposed to put 100 megawatts on the grid, you got to go buy it on the spot market, you'll probably go bankrupt unless you've bought a contract. And so everything that you buy in renewable energies, you have another backup power contract, a take contract to cover that. So that nobody's looking at the U.S. transmission system really hard. The voltages are all different. Some interconnects don't work. Cross state lines. There are breakers that never have been
All right,
closed.
Carl, I'm giving you as much money as you want. You're the equivalent of Doge. You can make this change. What will you do?
I think there needs to be a national effort similar to the federal highway plans where they did the interstates, that they go out and do that same thing with the electrical distribution grid. Standardize it around the country and upgrade it so the one that's EMP designed so you don't get shut down by somebody putting off a small, inexpensive EMP weapon in the back of a van. The other thing I worry about is the gene pool, and I use this because we built a plant in Mississippi. In Mississippi, the smart kids go to the oil field. Who you have left are not the sharpest tools in the shed. So I always said this gene pool is very shallow. Our schools really suck. And we've got to lift those all up by their bootstraps and get them all better. Don't know how you do it yet. My wife was a school teacher. She retired. And she worked in a school where it was the school of last resort. Those kids had been thrown out of every public school in the Pittsburgh area and every private school. And they were taking them on there.
So I appreciate the background on this. I've been doing quite a bit of research in this space and just recently invested in a direct-to-chip, water-cooled, containerized data, mobile data center unit out of Vienna, Austria, and bringing it to North America and other parts of the world. I'm curious, in this research, you mentioned nuclear power, and in doing that work, I read a study that you're 19 years out before that really becomes live. I don't know if that's fact or fiction. You mentioned 600 megawatts, and from what I've understand, it takes 20 million in capital to stand up 1 megawatt. and then 2 years of, dealing with cities and land and blah, blah, blah. Then you got hydropower. So you've got these huge demands on AI, you got huge demands on the grid. Like, how do we account for all this with all these different delivery models to provide data center capacity to these technologies?
I can tell you the strategy that I'm looking at, because I'm trying to protect what we're doing, is that I'm looking at every coal mine and every steel mill that is shut down and every coal-fired power plant. Because when they demolish them, they leave the switch yards there. Those properties are worth tens of millions of dollars, and they're just sitting there. And I'm looking to pick up a couple of them just to hold on to them.
I have a lot of questions, but
Yep.
anybody else has them?
Go ahead.
So, Eddie, I have a question for you, but so I'm going to ask you first. With regards to the brownfields, which I'm assuming we're referring to, I totally agree. I think that's the relatively low-hanging fruit. Do you, from your experience, think that's already saturated, meaning that's a strategy already? All the big ones have gone out and bought up all of the steel mills, coal plants, factories, etc.?
No, there's still a lot available. If you focus in on the coal mine areas, that's why there's so many battery plants being built in the southern panhandle of Ohio and West Virginia, because the power's there. But in my neighborhood of Pittsburgh, there's 4 really sweet sites that had power plants on them that and
Right.
a steel mill.
Yeah, so completely agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Eddie, so to give you just 2-minute context, the company I may have introduced previously as an ag tech company, but we raise capital from Microsoft because we are turning agricultural soils into a carbon sink. And I completely agree with you, actually with everything you said, including the capital stack and what many term as the valley of death, which for those who aren't aware is essentially when a company has raised venture for equity, has de-risked completely the technology, but needs to build a factory or a first-of-a-kind physical facility. And it's very expensive to do so. And the 2 options they're left with is either raise so much venture capital that there's nothing left of the company, or go to a bank, but they're not bankable yet because it's a first-of-a-kind facility. And so what you're seeing is many companies dying, even though they are building solutions that are needed for the world and also have been de-risked. I've been also advising family offices on the climate side because I believe families can play a very pivotal role in this because they're structurally more flexible. I'm just curious how you're thinking about this, and if generally, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting you tee this up, and we didn't play ping pong yesterday, or did we compare notes? So we're actually looking at probably raising some type of platform or fund from family offices to provide that capital, because it's not coming from the venture world, and for the right reasons. It's not coming from the infrastructure world yet either, because it is bankable, but only if you have enough equity, and the equity is not coming from that piece of equity is not coming from the infrastructure guys, although
They could cross over a little bit.
they can cross over a little bit for FID capital, right before you make the decision to put $1 billion of steel into the ground. And we're looking at a number of investments where we invested in that are looking for either hundreds of millions or $1 billion plus more. And it's not coming from the IRA anymore, because that's now killed as well. So where do you go? Well, that little piece of capital, which it's not little, but maybe 10 million, 40 million, something like that, right? So is a perfect sort of play for family offices who like to have the risk reward structure is very significant. It can come in the form of a convertible, which we did a number of times, where you basically, as a downside protection, have the ownership of the technology and the assets that are there as a collateral, and that can be a digital twin of the plant, et cetera, and a technology. As downside protection, as upside, you have sort of a convertible into the equity round the moment the infrastructure partner will invest, which comes with a significant upscaling of the value. Plus I would say market is now mid-teen to high-teen return on your money. And it's also short-term duration. So it's typically 12 to 18 months time in between sort of where you have the valley of death starting and your FID starting. And there are a number of of companies, to your point, that are stuck in this position. Great technology, good team, raised a bunch of capital from well-known investors and cannot move forward, which is obviously also from like a global perspective a shame, right? Because these technologies are working and they've been proven to work, yet they need to scale, you need capital to scale up. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done by sort of somehow syndicating. Even 361 can play a significant role there. Syndicating this with family offices. A number of them take the lead, vet it out, write a memo, and others join. And I think family office type capital, which is relatively more flexible always than institutional capital in many ways, can play a lead role there.
I would just add that your comments on education and the need for improving, I think AI will actually help that and is helping that greatly. I teach at Fordham and Seton Hall, and we're taking all types of master classes on how to elevate our teaching using AI, and it's pretty cool stuff. And it's making education more accessible and tutoring more accessible to more students. You know, my kids have tutors, but a lot of families can't afford tutors. But now with AI, they can. It's pretty cool.
And we have another company, Blueprint for Kids, which is doing this.
I worked on a very interesting project years ago, and this kind of dates myself, but it's probably 20 years ago. We did a AI training platform for the Air Force. And you basically put this little ball cap on your head, and it presented material to you. And when you understood it, your brain waves did a shift. And if you didn't understand it, it kept presenting it in a different manner. So it was really...
Why don't we bring that to our children?
Wow, that's pretty cool. You should
Seriously.
You should do a paper on that.
Why? I mean, I know that in wartime and in defense, which is going to be the next panel, we come up with lots of innovations, but why is that not trickling down?
It just got set on a shelf, and the Air Force now uses it to
Well,
train
why don't you and I
pilots.
go find that?
Go find it and buy a patent.
Let's get that too, yeah.
Pretty cool.
No, let's buy it first, and then we'll figure out what to do. Matthew,
You got to do a TED Talk on that.
Matthew Friedman, do you have any wrap-up thoughts on your part of the world?
Yeah, so sure. I mean, like, what I would say is there's great opportunity, there's great unknown. The opportunity side is there's a lot of people that are not going to make it through this shakeout. I would say, you know, a testament to my staff and I is that, as Eddie graciously mentioned, we've made it through the very interesting roller coaster ride over the last 6-7 years of, you know, strikes and COVID and tariffs and whatever. And so it's going to remain to be seen what the shakeout is. But I think companies like myself that are nimble and are able to adapt to the changing environment is going to be critical. I think automation, as we discussed earlier, is also going to be critical. The more we can do to rely less upon the average hourly worker.
How are you doing? Elena.
No, it doesn't. How much you have to drink?
It's over there. You can get it now.
Great, but you know that's going to put people a lot of jobs. But it's what's necessary in the current automation environment for automotive.
Excellent. Any last comments from the crowd or panel?
Can Matt just give us an update on tariffs from this seat?
Yeah, I know it's not about technology, but I know you've got plants in Canada, Mexico. We got tariffs going in, going out, turn on, turn off. How are you managing that?
Well, I mean, the answer is we're looking at it both as a whole and individually. So where we can move production from one place to the other, we're doing it. The key is, you know, we're only in Canada, we're only in Mexico, not because we're bringing in parts from those places to the other.
Hi, Don.
Those people, it's not correct. So what happens in between all this is I then with the look at new stuff.
America, and that's why
Good to see you. Austin.
Were you in the morning healthcare section, or just yeah, we did it this morning. Did you? Hey,
I was just literally calling like your panel's time.
yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Right on the button. How's it been going?
One in.
Plans result in assembly line production coming back to the U.S. We'll adapt accordingly and we're well positioned to do so. On the tariff side of things, again, what we're seeing is with the delays, right? Originally it was supposed to be, February, then it was going to be March, and now, sometime in April that they're going to take effect. And it's definitely caused, the leaders of both Canada and Mexico to respond and do things accordingly, mostly in the fight against, alleged drug trafficking and importation to the U.S. So if those companies, I think, rise to the occasion, like Claudia Sheinbaum has done in particular in Mexico, then I think that we'll see a little bit less of aggression on the tariff front.
Fair enough. All right. Well, for a moment, I didn't think we'd have our panelists for the last panel, but they suddenly appeared. Gator has invested in Dan's company, so it's a good, they didn't even know that each other would be here today, so that's great. Sarah, I don't think is going to make it, but I know that Elena has a dual-use fund as well, so let's just first thank Eddie, thank Carl, thank Matthew. Come join our 361 Firm community of investors and thought leaders. We have a lot of events created by the community as we collaborate on investments and philanthropic interests. Join us.